Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about commanding the clock, and it's all about time management for effective leaders. And I am so glad to have with me Miss Amy Hall, who is a certified life coach, president and founder of the Empowerment Group, the former owner and president of Ebony Construction, which is a heavy highway construction company. She's also the owner of Armstrong Steel. She's been very active on a national scale. She's been the past president of the Ohio Contractors Association Board of Directors. She's involved with the Associated General Contractors of America, and she does so much in other countries and just helping those and volunteering and giving her time and service. And that's why she's perfect to talk about how you juggle this clock. So welcome, Amy.
Hello, and thank you, Dr. Shanda Gore, for having me here. It is so good to be back.
Excellent. Yes, you're not new to the show because you have such a wide variety of experiences and discussion areas. And I'm so glad that you could return.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Yes. So let's get right to it. I'm so taken with the fact about effective time management. And I didn't know if you knew this, but February, which is coming up, is Time Management Month. Did you know that?
I had absolutely no idea until today. I will always remember this to be Time Management Month because my birthday is in February. So it will remind me to get my act together and manage my time.
Yes, by the time we're talking about this, we're clearing up January and putting it to bed and getting ready for February. So this is very timely because we have to be prepared. And being early is actually being on time. And if you're on time, you're what?
Late.
There you go. So we're going to manage our time. So the first question I'm going to have for you is, how would you define being effective with time management? How would you define that?
I think there's multiple ways to look at how to be effective with time management, because I think there's one from strictly like a clock perspective and managing your clock in your calendar, right? So you have a finite amount of time from A to B, from B to C, and C to D. So I think that's one way of looking at it. But then I think there's another way of effectively managing your time, which I think is a big drain on your time, which would be your thoughts and your emotions. And so I think that's another part of effectively managing your time, is effectively managing yourself and your thoughts, because so often we drain ourselves of critical energies that we have because we're so wrapped up in our thoughts, which then become distractions to our time, the other aspect of our time, which is the finite part. So it's really learning to balance both aspects, which then lead to effective time management.
Mm-hmm. I think when you talk about the fact that you're also a life coach, you're doing a lot of that work with those that you're working with having that. When we talk about work-life balance, sometimes we talk about work-life integration and what that looks like. Can you talk a little bit about tools and apps and other instruments that you might use to help manage time better, more efficiently?
Oh, absolutely. I think I have had, like, this week has been a crazy week for my time management, because usually I use just a calendar on my phone. But for some reason, after the update, it has reshuffled and remanaged my life for me. And so what that taught me is that I need a backup. I'm an old-fashioned paper girl, even though I know everything is going into digital and, paper free and things like that. But what it taught me is that I need both. I need the paper, because something about writing things down kind of sticks in my mind, where if I just put it in my phone, it's there, and then I become reliant on that, letting me know, like, I have an alert, in 15 minutes this is happening, or in a day this is happening, so on and so forth. So for me, I do extremely well with both paper and my calendar. And another thing from my time management is a to-do list. I love crossing off a to-do list. I know that sounds so simple, but something about a to-do list really helps me structure my thoughts. It helps me stay on task, and it helps keep me motivated, because I feel like I can see what I've accomplished that day. And that's huge for me in time management.
I'm going to have to ask you a question. If you're like me, I used to keep a system. I had a system. Every year I would order the same paper system, and then, and I won't plug them, but I used this paper system. I prioritized it, A, B, C, and then I would check off my tasks. And then I got in the habit of storing them. So once my year was done, I would put them away and store them. So I'm wondering, do you see any value in looking back in the past about, what you did in the past with your tasks and goals? And do you ever look back on any of your schedules?
So it's really interesting that you said that. So this year, the beginning of January, I did a 2024 audit of my year. And so to your point, it's looking back, right? And I started out with photos that helped me see all the things that I did for the year. But I also went into my schedule and really looked at each day and things that I did throughout the year, because I don't know about you, but I get so busy in doing, and it becomes, okay, I compartmentalize things. So I'm like, okay, from today I have X, Y, Z. So done, put on the shelf, box closed. And then I move on to the next one, and then I move on to the next one. And I think by looking back at my schedule, it allows me to really appreciate how far I've come and all the things I've done in the year, because so often I think we normalize and make it not a deal that all the things that we do and all the things that we accomplish. And I think it's okay to give yourself a little high five and a pat on the back and say, you know what? You've had a great year. Good for you. And it also identifies blind spots that I might not have seen, where I look and say, you know what? I spent a lot of time doing X, and it didn't get me the net return on investment that I would have wanted. So therefore, now because I've looked at this, I can go back and say, okay, when this comes up, it's now more in the forefront of my mind versus an afterthought.
Yeah, I've noticed that it can be a challenge, is taking a look at your schedule and really being constructive criticism on your own calendar and looking at it in a way that says, you know what, I shouldn't have put so much time and energy into that. And it didn't, like you said, reap the rewards that you would hope for. The other thing too is it's a learning experience. I'm talking with those that coaching and saying to them is really take the time, carve out time in the morning, prepare your day, but don't load your day to the point where you're disappointed the next day that you only got one thing on the list done. That happens. Mm-hmm. But making a habit of it, there's something that's inherently wrong with the scheduling if that's occurring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Point well said.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about prioritizing tasks, like what are you going to get done? How do you go about doing that?
I look at where my thoughts go, right? And so what I realize is if I have something to do and I kick the can down the road, I kick the can to tomorrow, I kick tomorrow to the next day, I kick the next day to the next day, that has taken up a tremendous amount of thought capacity because I'm thinking about what I didn't do. And so what I started to do is, instead of thinking about it, I just do it. Mm-hmm. And that's where my to-do list comes into play. I really started to be aware of what I procrastinate on, what I find easy, and really cultivate a habit of doing. Just do it, because the 10 or 15 seconds, minutes, whatever it takes to get done, it frees up me so much from an energetic standpoint, because I'm not overthinking all of the things that I have to do tomorrow because I did them. And so now it's like clean slate. There might be one or two things that push just because, your day is finite, but normally you're able to, or I'm able to get things done. And it's a really empowering and energizing thing, is to scratch that off my to-do list.
So let's talk about habit forming, because by the time this show airs, we are now fully into the month of January, getting ready for Time Management Month, which is February, which means those that have had those New Year's resolutions, they may have fallen off by now. It takes so many days. I've seen reports where it takes 25 days, 27 days for a habit to actually become instilled, where you're doing it normally every day. And so, how do you go about creating that ability to keep up the work, whatever that is? Like, again, I'm going to start my day out, I'm going to look at it, and then I'm going to go ahead with my task list, knowing I'm ultimately going to have a goal. How do you form your habits? How do you get into securing that?
Generally, a lot depends on like if it's things I need to do during the workday, or if there are other things I need to do just for myself personally that can fit into my workday or at the beginning or at the end of my workday. And that's really, I start to prioritize that way. There are things that are, they just are what they are. That phone call at 2:00, that Zoom call at noon, that whatever at another time. Those are fixed stationary things that I'm not able to move. But then there are other things like in the morning, I like to meditate or I might go work out. And I'm not a morning worker outer, so I'd rather do it at the end of my day. And so I know that, right? And so I schedule that like towards the end of my day. And so it's really, for me, it becomes looking at what I can and cannot do. And then it moves into, okay, here are the personal things that I need to do or I want to do. And where does that fit into my day? And then I also give myself time to just chill out because you need that downtime. You need that time to just shut it off and shut it down. And I think that comes into, just being good. And also, if I don't schedule that time, sometimes I don't even give it to myself because my time gets so caught up in being a mother, working, coaching, whatever it may be, that I give my time away and I don't even realize by the end of the day, my time is, been given. I've loved it, but I also have to include me in that timeline.
I will share a philosophy that I've tried to stick to, although I have been guilty of having 7 to 8, one time 13 meetings in a day, which is just not feasible to keep up. One, because it's going to put you in a position of possible burnout. So I don't recommend it. And so getting control of that, commanding that clock, right? So looking at it and saying, I'm not going to do more than 3 meetings in a day or 4 meetings in a day. So you give that time in between to rest, to chill, and to really think and process what just happened in the meeting you were just in. There's so much, I think, to your point, we get onto that treadmill of just keep going. We're productive, but how effective are you? You're productive, but have you really thought through the solution all the way? Well, you didn't have enough time.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Because you're so in it. And then to your point, you compartmentalize and then you move on to the next day or to the next thing. And so you didn't even have time to sit back, recap, think about, okay, here's what was really good. Here's my next steps. Here are this and this, because you've moved on to the next thing and then the next thing and the next thing. And so exactly taking that time and really getting a hold and you commanding your schedule and not let your schedule command you.
That's one thing I've had individuals tell me, I just can't seem to find the time. It's not that the time is hidden away from them. The time has always been there. Are they ignoring how the time works? Are they ignoring the clock? Is it really a denial, the fact that the clock is finite? You only have so many minutes. It's your choice on how you prioritize it. And I think that earlier in careers, when there is a need to really build up your track record of being successful and effective, that you see effectiveness and success equated to cramming as much together as possible. And then as maturity with your professional career goes, you realize, no. That doesn't mean you're going to be the best, right? It just means you're the busiest. And raising your hand saying, I'm the busiest in the room doesn't necessarily mean you're the most effective.
Oh, that's so true. And, there's so often my friends will be like, hey, what have you been doing? I'm like, oh, I've been so busy. And I hear that about myself. And then I'm like, ooh, busy is not always good, to your point, right? Busy is busy, but busy can be good. And I think there was like this badge of honor that I would, have and put on my, my left arm and just say, oh, I'm busy today. And it made me feel, I think it gave me some self-worth and some level of importance that my day has value because I'm busy. And I don't know about you, but I grew up in a family of like hard work and stay busy. And so that is true because, they always say, idle hands lead to other things. But there's also a balance on the other side of busy. So what I'm learning to do for myself is like, I'll run hard and I'll push, but then I'll say, okay, I'm going to cut it off here because I know that those are things that needed to be done. I'm okay with it, but now I'm okay with this over here. So it's learning the balance between the two. And I've been really trying to find a better word than busy. I've been really trying to look at my word choice because busy gets more busy. So I've been really trying to take a breath and pause for a second and say, okay, is busy really the word that I want to use to describe my life? And I would say, oh, my day's been full.
Yes.
It's been great. I've had a phenomenal day. And so I've really tried to learn and be aware of and be very cognizant of the words that I'm saying and the things that I'm saying, because they always come to fruition.
I think speaking into existence is definitely, there's power in that. To my empowerment group lady, there is some power in just saying it and not how you reframe it. There's power in that. That's why commanding the clock and not allowing the clock to command you. So now I'm going to ask you the fun questions. And that is, what are you reading for fun in between your time when you're not busy? But when you're not actually, you're trying to wind down, what are you watching and what are you reading?
So I just started a book called The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And that book, I'm like, oh, she wrote this book for me. And it's really about let them, right? But it kind of goes into, commanding your schedule. And, it's the scheduling of your thoughts. It's the scheduling of your emotions. It's the scheduling of your time. And so it's let them, right? So I don't need to dictate everybody's schedules and everybody's thoughts, and people don't have to get in line with how I think things should be. And when I let them, it really allows me to let me use that energy and time over here. And so that's my new read, and it's a game changer. And there's so many things in that which are phenomenal. What I'm watching, I've gotten like hooked on documentaries. I don't really know like what it is, and I've spent a ton of time on the airplane. So I've watched Cesar Chavez documentary. I've watched a documentary on child labor in countries, unfortunately, including the United States. I've watched 2 on Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, when he was president, I was probably like 6 or 7. Ooh, I've just dated myself, but it is what it is. So I knew Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer from Georgia, right? And he was a president, flanked in between Ford and Reagan. But I didn't know about him and about his policy and stuff like that. And it was just phenomenal and fascinating. And so lately I've been like hooked on these documentaries, and I'm loving it. And it just is like really motivating me, because so many people have started exactly like where we've all started, from such seriously humble beginnings, and have taken and made the most of their life for something bigger than themselves. And scheduling, right? Commanding their schedule, commanding their life, and doing all those things. It was phenomenal.
I think it's powerful, especially the book. I've heard nothing but great things about Let Them. And I just got through with a coaching session talking to a group that very clearly, you cannot control the actions of someone else. Let that go. Control your reaction to how they come to you. That is really critically important. And so it makes some people uncomfortable when the fact that you're not reacting. That's a book that I really like, The Dance of Anger. And yes, where, again, are you rising to the anger that's being pushed onto you? Really checking the emotions to your first point, and how control of those emotions help you actually control that clock, because then it's not wasted time. It takes so much time to come down off of being angry and having that emotional, your investment in it. So excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing that. I can't thank you enough. And I know you're very not busy, but your day is full. You're right?
Yes, my day is full, but this is the perfect use of my time, because it's always such a joy and honor and a pleasure to be able to spend time with you and to talk about like these really awesome things and things that are so critical in everybody's life. Whether you're in business or whether you're a student or whether you manage a home or whatever roles we all play in this grand scheme of life. I mean, being able to command your time and command your day it really starts to set the tone for who you are in your life and how you want to be taken seriously and how you show up in other people's lives. So thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Anytime. So, with that said, we want to thank our listeners for the Pen Leader podcast. We appreciate your feedback at info@MaysAssociatesLTD.com. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Edward Jones Financial Advisor, Miss Jennifer Panzician. Thank you so much. And you can definitely get control of your finances through her for your financial future. So, until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Mays & Associates LTD, creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.